Florida just redrew its congressional map 4 years ahead of the next census, flipping its delegation from 20 to 8 Republican to a projected 24 to 4, and 3 lawsuits were filed within hours of the bill's passage.
Yeah, it was quite a start to the week.
Seriously, welcome to the 10th. This is your Sunday morning briefing covering the week that was and the week that's coming in state legislatures and Congress.
Right, and, we're here to get you informed before your week even starts.
Exactly. And today, we are sorting through a massive stack of legislative data powered by amendment.app because we're trying to figure out exactly why states are suddenly rewriting the fundamental rules of the country.
Yeah, and it really is a profound moment to be tracking state-level action right now. I mean, when you step back and synthesize the sheer volume of bills moving this week, a very clear overarching pattern emerges.
What kind of pattern are we talking about?
Well, we can basically call it the cartographers and the coders.
Okay, the cartographers and the coders. I like that.
Right, because two parallel projects ran out of state capitals this week. On one hand, you have one set of states that picked up pens and started redrawing congressional maps mid-decade, which is, completely untethered from the usual census cycle.
Right.
And then on the other hand, another set of states picked up keyboards and started writing the rules entirely from scratch for artificial intelligence, biometric data, and basically what the American workplace is going to look like by 2030.
The cartographers and the coders, it almost sounds like they are literally redrawing the physical and digital maps of the country at the exact same time.
That's exactly what's happening.
So let's start with the physical map, because that cold open Florida House Bill 1, that's the legislation that really set the tone this week.
It absolutely did.
Yeah, the Florida legislature passed it on May 7th, and it completely redraws all 28 of their congressional districts in a non-census year. And, analysts project that these new lines flip 4 Democratic seats, which creates that massive shift to a 24 to 4 Republican delegation.
And the thing is, we're seeing that this is not an isolated event. Just look at how the week closed.
Oh, right, in South Carolina.
Exactly. 25 South Carolina Republicans introduced South Carolina House Bill 5683. And that is a bill to redraw all 7 of the state's congressional districts.
Which is huge. Yeah.
It is, especially because it notably includes Representative Jim Clyburn's majority-black 6th district.
Oh.
And what's really wild here is that as recently as January, South Carolina leadership stated publicly that they had no appetite for mid-decade redistricting.
None at all.
Right. But then, literally 2 days before this bill dropped, the Wall Street Journal reported that the White House was applying pressure to Southern Republican leaders to redo their maps ahead of the 2026 midterms.
Okay, wait, let me stop you there. Because, for anyone who follows civics, we usually think of redistricting as this massive once-a-decade headache, right?
Yeah, exactly. Tied to the decennial census.
Right, tied directly to the census. And the last one was in 2020. So, structurally speaking, what just changed in the legal architecture that makes mid-decade map drawing suddenly viable across multiple states at the exact same time?
It entirely comes down to a shift in the federal legal backdrop. So, last week, the Supreme Court ruled 6-3 in the case of Louisiana v. Calais.
Okay.
And functionally, that ruling dismantled Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act.
Okay. And just to make sure we're all on the same page here, Section 2 is the specific provision that has historically barred states from drawing maps that dilute minority voting power, right?
Exactly. For nearly 60 years, Section 2 has been the primary federal floor protecting minority representation in redistricting.
Wow.
But the majority opinion in this new ruling fundamentally alters how race can be considered when drawing these maps. Justice Elena Kagan, writing her dissent, she didn't mince words at all. She called the majority's reading all but a dead letter.
All but a dead letter. That is strong phrasing.
Very strong. So think about it. If you are a state legislature and that federal floor has suddenly been removed, the legal calculus changes overnight. States are acting right now because they realize they can redraw these maps with significantly less risk of federal court intervention.
That is a massive shift. It's like finding out the building code that prevented you from tearing down a load-bearing wall in your house has just been repealed.
Well, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, of course you're going to see a sudden rush of renovations.
It's a highly accurate way to look at the legal risk profile, for sure. Now, there is a legislative counterweight forming in Congress, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act.
Right.
It was reintroduced in both chambers to explicitly rebuild those Section 2 protections that the court just took apart. But, objectively speaking, its prospects in the current Senate remain highly uncertain.
Okay, so we have states acting as cartographers, fundamentally shifting the physical map of representation. Let's look at the digital map, the coders.
Yes. And what's fascinating here is that this is where we see Justice Louis Brandeis's concept of the laboratories of democracy playing out in real time.
I love that phrase.
It fits perfectly, right?
Yeah.
Because we have 4 different states tackling the exact same question, which is, how do you govern technology that is advancing exponentially faster than the federal government can act?
And Connecticut is really leading the charge on this front, right? Like, Connecticut Senate Bill 5 is the headline legislation here.
It really is.
State Senator James Maroney is the lead sponsor, and Governor Ned Lamont currently has it on his desk. And this is the broadest state AI law passed by any chamber in the country. It passed the Senate 32-4 and the House 131-17.
Those are massive margins.
Huge margins. And it strictly bans AI from being used to override the terms of a union contract, and it outlaws using AI to discriminate in hiring, firing, or promoting workers.
Right.
But let's unpack the hiring piece for a second, because practically speaking, how does an algorithm actually discriminate in a way that requires state law to step in?
Well, it all comes down to the training data. So if a company uses an AI tool to screen, say, thousands of resumes, that AI has to learn what a quote-unquote good candidate looks like, right?
Sure.
And it does that by analyzing historical hiring data. So if a company historically hired mostly men for a certain engineering role, the algorithm learns to mathematically penalize resumes that include the word women's.
Wait, really? Just the word itself?
Yeah, like if someone lists a women's chess club or a women's college on their resume, it creates this automated, completely invisible filter.
That is wild.
It is, and this bill makes it explicitly illegal to deploy those tools without auditing them for that exact kind of bias, which means a worker can actually sue if they're unfairly filtered out.
Okay, that's huge. And the bill also covers something called frontier AI. What exactly distinguishes frontier AI from, just the basic chatbot you may use on your phone?
So frontier AI refers to the largest, most capable AI systems being developed today. These are the massive foundational models that require immense computational power and millions of dollars to train.
Okay.
They are the engines that power everything else. So putting hard guardrails around frontier AI while simultaneously tackling deepfakes and workplace protections. And it's just an incredibly ambitious regulatory approach for a single state to take on.
But Connecticut isn't the only one moving on this.
Not at all.
Let's look at the Midwest, because Iowa Senate File 2417 just passed with unanimous bipartisan votes. I'm talking 48-0 in the Senate and 95-0 in the House.
That's practically unheard of for tech regulation.
Right. And this makes Iowa the first state in the nation to put hard rules on AI chatbots talking to children,
Yes.
which, if you are a listener with kids in the house, the mechanics of this bill are frankly fascinating.
Yeah, they really are.
It mandates that operators disclose the chatbot is not a human. It completely bans AI from posing as a licensed therapist. And, this is the big one, it outlaws engagement tactics designed to manipulate minors into spending more time with the bot.
And I'd argue the self-harm protocol is the crucial mechanism in that Iowa bill, because the technology has reached a point where an AI can perfectly mimic empathetic human interaction.
Yeah.
And if a teenager is expressing thoughts of self-harm to a chatbot, the bot is naturally programmed to keep the conversation going to maximize engagement time.
Oh, geez. Because engagement is the whole metric.
Exactly. So this law forces companies to build hard stop and redirect protocols so the AI doesn't accidentally encourage a mental health crisis just to keep the user online.
That makes total sense. So moving from chatbots to biometrics, New York Senate Bill 1422 is being heard by the Senate Investigations Committee on Tuesday. And this bill creates a private right of action.
Yes.
But let me stop there, because private right of action sounds like pure legalese. What does that actually mean for an average person living in New York?
So it is the most powerful enforcement mechanism you can possibly put in a state law. Normally, if a company breaks a privacy law, a chronically underfunded state regulatory agency has to investigate and find them.
Which takes forever.
Exactly. It can take years. But a private right of action skips the regulator entirely. It allows any individual New Yorker to drag a tech company directly into a courthouse and sue them for scanning their face or fingerprint without written consent.
Wow.
Yeah, it changes the entire risk math for a corporation.
And it has massive financial teeth, too, because the New York bill is modeled directly on a 2008 Illinois law. And just to give you a sense of the scale here, under that Illinois version, average citizens suing directly forced Facebook to pay a $650 million settlement.
Which is astronomical.
Yeah. Google paid $100 million and TikTok paid $92 million.
Precisely. And rounding out the technology side, we have California Senate Bill 1013, which is heading for its appropriations vote on Monday. This bill targets ALPR, which stands for Automated License Plate Reader Data.
Right. So if you've ever driven past one of those cameras mounted on a traffic light or like a police cruiser, that's an ALPR system. It is just logging the location, time, and plate number of every car that passes.
Exactly.
So how does this bill change that?
Well, currently, local law enforcement agencies in California share that mobility data through a massive interconnected pipe with over 80,000 outside agencies across the country.
80,000?
Yes, including federal immigration enforcement. But California Senate Bill 1013 explicitly cuts that pipe. It stops local agencies from sharing automated location data with out-of-state or federal entities.
So it's essentially a massive privacy shield going up around where you drive, who you visit, and what clinics or protests you might be attending.
Exactly the practical effect, yeah.
By the way, for anyone wanting to see how those committee votes in New York and California shake out this week, you can actually track the real-time status of these bills by utilizing the tools at amendment.app.
And, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's fascinating to see states acting as coders to build the legal architecture of the future, while simultaneously acting as medics in the present.
What do you mean by medics?
Well, because while they are regulating 2030's technology, they're also being forced to patch immediate, urgent healthcare gaps left by federal absences.
Oh, medics is a great way to frame it, because it is pure financial triage. Look at North Carolina House Bill 696. Governor Josh Stein signed this bill last week to inject $319 million into the state's Medicaid program.
Right.
Without this bill, the entire program was on track to completely run out of money by the end of May. But to make the math work, the trade-offs are just brutal.
They really are. The mechanism of the bill requires balancing the books by cutting coverage for roughly 27,000 lawfully present non-citizen pregnant women and children.
That is heavy.
It is. It also adds maximum allowable copays for the state's newly expanded Medicaid population.
It's the definition of a life raft scenario. You have too many people in the water and not enough space in the boat. Governor Stein openly called the bill seriously flawed, but he signed it because the alternative was 725,000 people sinking, losing their coverage entirely.
It is a stark example of a state having to substitute for a lack of federal funding. And we are seeing a structural shift happening in Louisiana's healthcare market as well.
Tell me about that.
So Louisiana House Bill 1236 passed the House 1-2-0 and heads to the Senate Insurance Committee on Wednesday. And this bill takes direct aim at PBMs, or pharmacy benefit managers.
Let's define that, because PBMs operate entirely in the shadows for most patients. They are essentially the corporate middlemen, like the bouncers at the club that sit between health insurers, drug manufacturers, and your local pharmacy, deciding what drugs are covered and how much the pharmacy gets paid to dispense them, right?
That's right. And independent pharmacies have been closing at unprecedented rates because the reimbursement models set by these PBMs often pay the pharmacy less than what it costs them to buy the drug in the first place.
Wait, less than what it costs them? How is that even legal?
It's a massive issue. So Louisiana House Bill 1236 abstract forces PBMs to reimburse pharmacies at the wholesale cost of the drug, plus a fair dispensing fee on commercial insurance plans.
Okay, that's a huge shift.
It is one of the first major state attempts to regulate that middleman math for non-government commercial plans to stop local pharmacies from bleeding out.
And then over in New Jersey, we have New Jersey Senate Bill 2260. This bill has been stalled for 22 months, but it finally gets a hearing on Monday. It acts as a legal shield, protecting providers and patients in New Jersey for legally protected reproductive and gender-affirming care.
Which is very significant.
Yeah, and crucially, it explicitly protects patients who travel in from out of state where that care might currently be banned.
Right. The mechanism here blocks New Jersey courts and law enforcement from cooperating with civil or criminal subpoenas from other states that are targeting those medical procedures.
Got it.
And it locks those protections into actual statute, meaning it survives even if a future governor wants to revoke the current executive order.
So we've covered the loud headlines, right? Redistricting, AI, healthcare. But there is a quiet half of the week that we absolutely cannot ignore.
The bipartisan bills.
Yes.
These are the laws passing unanimously or near unanimously that rarely make national news, but will directly change the daily texture of life for millions of Americans.
These under-the-radar bills are exactly why we look at the state level. Like, take Georgia Senate Bill 569, which is currently sitting on Governor Brian Kemp's desk. Anyone who has ever had their car towed knows the sheer panic and frustration of trying to find it.
Oh, it's a nightmare.
Tracking it down across different private lots can take weeks. This bill creates a statewide searchable tow database. It forces every towing company in the state to report a towed vehicle to this centralized system by October, and it cuts the window they have to notify the owner from 15 days down to just 7.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it passed the Senate 45-5 and the House 160-0.
Wow. And up in New York, the Senate Labor Committee is taking up New York Senate Bill 4515 on Tuesday. This bill extends paid sick leave to domestic workers, so nannies, housekeepers, home health aides.
Okay, that seems straightforward.
Well, to understand the significance, you actually have to look at the history. This is a specific workforce that was explicitly carved out and excluded from federal labor protections under the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1935.
1935.
Yeah, so New York is stepping in to close a nearly 90-year-old loophole.
That is a long time coming. Meanwhile, in Massachusetts, they are looking at the brutal math of going green. Massachusetts Senate Bill 2694 tackles the excise tax on zero-emission heavy-duty trucks.
Okay, how does that work?
Right now, an electric Class 8 semi-truck costs about 2 to 3 times more than its diesel counterpart. But because Massachusetts excise taxes are tied directly to the vehicle's total value, freight operators are hit with a tax bill 2 to 3 times higher just for upgrading.
Well, that makes no sense.
Exactly. That's like your cell phone provider charging you a massive penalty fee every month just because you finally upgraded your dangerous exploding battery to a safe one. You're being financially punished for doing the exact thing the state wants you to do.
Right.
So this bill fixes that by capping the tax at the median price of a gas-equivalent truck, which is a massive relief valve for school districts and local freight operators trying to electrify their fleets.
That is a very practical fix. Finally, we have Rhode Island Senate Bill 2166, which updates the overtime threshold for salaried managers.
Okay.
So Rhode Island currently allows employers to legally deny overtime pay to any salaried manager earning more than $200 a week.
Wait, $200 a week?
Yes, that is a wage floor set back in 1968 that was never adjusted for inflation.
That is insane.
Right. So this bill phases that threshold up to roughly $78,000 a year by 2029, which pulls thousands of lower-middle-class managers back into overtime eligibility.
It's incredible to see the scale and the granular detail of what's passing at the state level. But when you step back and look at the whole board, the common thread of the week becomes undeniable. State action is running in front of, around, and directly over federal vacuums.
Absolutely. And to fully grasp the context of these state laws, we have to examine what did not happen in Washington this week.
Right.
We tracked 5 notable absences. First, the Senate did not invoke war powers on Iran for the 5th time. The vote failed 47-50, with Senator Susan Collins joining Senator Rand Paul. They missed the 60-day legal deadline under the War Powers Resolution, and the administration informed Congress that hostilities have terminated.
Okay, what else?
Second, the Department of Homeland Security funding bill did not include money for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. House Bill 7147 zeroed out ICE funding completely.
Completely zeroed out.
Yes. And in response, the Senate is advancing a separate $70 billion ICE and Customs and Border Protection package completely outside of regular appropriations.
Wait, so how are they doing that?
The mechanism they are using for that Senate package is budget reconciliation.
Okay, wait, budget reconciliation. That always sounds like a hyper-specific Washington loophole. How does that actually help them pass it?
It is a legislative procedure that allows certain tax, spending, and debt limit bills to bypass the standard 60-vote filibuster in the Senate.
Yes.
Under reconciliation, you only need a simple 51-vote majority to pass the package. It is the most powerful tool the majority party has to move funding when regular order breaks down.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's look at the third item, which highlights a massive contrast in how funding is allocated. The Senate Judiciary Committee did not refuse to fund the new White House ballroom. They approved $1 billion for Secret Service security for this ballroom, in the exact same week that the House Appropriations Committee voted to cut SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, by $6.2 billion.
Right. And fourth, the Environmental Protection Agency did not retain the 2009 endangerment finding. For context, that 2009 finding was the foundational scientific and legal document that required the federal government to regulate greenhouse gases under the Clean Air Act. The EPA formally rescinded it this week.
Wow, okay. And the last one.
Finally, The Supreme Court did not vacate the Fifth Circuit's mifepristone ruling.
Yeah.
The Fifth Circuit had stripped telehealth access to mifepristone, which is a medication used in over a quarter of all U.S. abortions. Justice Samuel Alito paused that lower court ruling until May 11th to give the Supreme Court time to decide whether to take up the case.
And we always monitor the public pressure signal, and if you look at ResistBot's top petitions this week, they directly mirrored these exact federal vacuums. The highest signature campaigns from citizens were explicitly demanding the passage of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and demanding an end to the $1 billion ballroom security funding.
It's very telling. As federal action slows or stalls entirely, the speed, the scope, and the ambition of state legislatures are fundamentally redefining where American life is actually governed. We are watching 50 different laboratories operate at maximum capacity.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's look at the numbers to land with. 24-4. That is Florida's projected congressional delegation after Florida House Bill 1, up from 20-8. 32-4 and 131-17. Those are Connecticut's bicameral votes on Connecticut Senate Bill 5, creating the broadest state AI law in the country, and $650 million. That is the exact amount Illinois' biometric privacy law pulled from Facebook in a direct-to-consumer lawsuit, which is the exact model New York Senate Bill 1422 is attempting to replicate right now.
Two different state legislatures. Two different futures, both being drafted at once,
Yeah.
the Cartographers and the Toters.
For the full text status and plain English breakdown of any bill we mentioned today, head to amendment.app. Thanks for listening to The 10th. We'll see you next Sunday.